Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, do I have a treat for you before I introduce you to our guest. Here's a quote just for this episode. Character is higher than intellect. A great soul will be strong to live as well as strong to think. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Our guest today is a friend of the Culture Matters podcast, a great soul, a contrarian, a thinker, a thoughtful friend, someone that's put up with me for many years. Started the business April 1st, 2002 in the real estate business, going on over 21 years, going into 22 years. And been in one thing and succeeded at it. There's lessons right there. Huge personal development, mentor, mentee. Uh, Thanks for coming back to the show, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks for
Now,
having me back.
yeah, of course. I'm being told 80% of real estate agents are not in the business of real estate in 2025.
I hope so.
What does that mean?
It means sayonara, goodbye, right? Listen, I mean, I do believe that over the next 5 years, we could have about 50% less. I mean, 80% seems pretty extreme. If they really want to get it to rid of 80%, just make our board dues, $5,000-$10,000 a year, right? Like raise the fees, right? That would put out the agents that really shouldn't be in the business anyway, right? And look, I get it. Everyone deserves to have a second go at something, to have a side hustle, whatever the case may be. But unfortunately, because it's been so easy to get a real estate license and because it's so affordable, that there's a lot of people that have real estate license they shouldn't have real estate license, right? They're jumping in the business to capture a quick buck and sell a house to a friend or family, and I get it, right? But the business needs professionalism, right? It always has, it always will. And the reason it needs professionalism, this is the largest financial transaction of somebody's life. This is big numbers we're talking about here. It's big deals. And I remember for years when I looked at real estate, I used to be super, especially in the beginning, super on top of my game, going like, listen, like there's a legal contract here. This is someone's livelihood. This is like the real deal. And I think a lot of people just never look at it that way. They just look at it as like, oh, these real estate agents, they're in the business, they get paid a lot of money, and they just shuffle paperwork. And we do way more than shuffle paperwork, right? I mean, what job do you like? We're on 24/7 all the time. We work all the time, right? We never stop. If we're not working with clients to buy or sell their homes, and we're trying to generate business, or we're trying to teach something, or we're trying to coach something, or we're working on systems, we're working on getting better. It never ends, right? It's real estate's a lifestyle. It's not a job, it's a career.
18 houses transact in your first 8 months. What was your ritual in the morning, at night?
At
How
that
did
point,
you?
like I was just driven. I was just committed. I just wanted to succeed. And I was telling the story probably yesterday. I remember, I was at Coldwell Banker, and like day one, I bought Top Producer. Like that was when you had to buy like CDs, right? Like DVD ROMs or whatever they were called back in the day.
Wow.
There was no online service. And my broker said to me, like, you in this long term? Yeah. He said, go buy Top Producer. It cost me like $400 back in 2002. I bought it. I just started loading everyone into the database, right? Picked the farm area. She just sit in front of my TV at night, making folding, stuffing, flyers, sticking them in envelopes, sticking stamps on. My wife and I would sit and watch Survivor, like back in the day, and we'd be stuffing envelopes, right? But I remember being in training classes, and someone said to me, like, "What's your goal?" I said, "I want to sell 4 houses a month." That was my goal. Like, I don't even know where it came from. I just said, "This is what I want to do."
Wow.
And in year 2, I did that. First,
You really, you
first
really,
year in the business, I sold like 43, so close enough, right?
wow. What do you mean you were stuffing envelopes?
Literally, like I would make flyers. I would Xerox them on fluorescent paper because I didn't even want to print them on in color ink because it was too expensive. So I had black and white ink on fluorescent paper. I used to go to Staples for $5 a ream. I would buy pink and blue and yellow and green and whatever. and I would make flyers for farm areas to clients, and I would literally I bring them home, and at night my wife and I would sit in front of the TV and we'd be folding stuffing, folding stuffing, folding stuffing, folding stuffing. Right. Then we'd run out to the post office with bulk mail. We'd come in with giant pieces of, the big bulk mail trays and come up to the post office and here it is, stamp them, the whole deal. Why I stopped doing that, I have no idea. you know, it works, and it got me going. And I didn't do a ton of phone calling back then. I would just email people. I would stay in touch with people. And my friends knew I got in at the age 27, so people knew that, that was the time that people were buying and selling. I would just reach out to people and just say hello. I didn't even start prospecting consistently probably until 2004, maybe, when I got into Mike Ferry.
What was that experience like?
Um, it was life changing for me, right?
Huh.
I didn't even, my wife signed me up. She went to a local Mike Ferry event, and she calls me and she's like, "Hey, there's this guy here." And it's funny, he's now a friend of mine. He's like, "There's this guy here, and I think you could do what he's doing. So I want to sign you up for this coaching program. It's $1,000 a month." I'm like, "What do you mean $1,000 a month? You crazy?" She's like, "I'm signing you up." And then that just led into, going to the conventions, the events, mastermind groups, connections, relationships, people, and just, the drive to grow.
What is it about those types of environments that is so helpful when times aren't good?
Connection is probably the biggest part of it, right? Like ideas. Like I reconnected with a friend of mine that him and I ran a mastermind group together when we were in Mike Ferry. We talk every once in a while. And I reached out to him last week. I'm like, "Hey, I need your help." And we talked and he sent me some stuff on, what he does to run his company and to recruit and how to retain and the schedules, and gave me a couple other good systems that I'm already looking into to implement. And, there's lifelong relationships that I built with people that are always there for you. They're a phone call away. And during that time in the Mike Ferry system, the most important part of that for me was the mastermind group, were those relationships, right? Like, I mean, at any given day, I was on the phone with probably 3 to 5 of my mastermind group members. And we had accountability calls, we had role play calls, we had just, "Hey, what are you working on?" calls, whatever. Like I would be in the car driving to appointments, and I would just randomly call one of the guys or girls in my group and just reach out, and we would just talk business. Because the thing is, I think sometimes we think we're alone, right? We think we can do it all. Salespeople in general are kind of loners, right? In general. Because we know how to produce, we know what it takes. We don't, we're self-motivated, right? So, but you're not alone, right? And nobody wants to be alone, but that you're going to survive no matter what it takes if you have to do it on your own. That's kind of like the mindset I think that a lot of us have. But you can do more when you're in relationship with other people, and you're brainstorming and you're asking for help, and you're finding out ideas from them and you're learning from them, right? Like constantly having an open mind. Right? Not I don't have a better way. Maybe you have a better way. So let's talk about it and let's learn.
What do you think it was about you that your wife believed in you to go make that huge investment? That's a big. Usually, it's the other way around. The person's being convinced.
Right? So it's so funny when
Not
I told
to.
this story many times, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, look, our spouses always see the things in us that we don't see in ourselves. Not always, but a lot of times. And I mean, she knew I was going to hustle. She knew I was going to be successful. She knew I was a worker, and I guess she just saw it as an opportunity for growth for me. And it was, And she used to go to the events with me, and we used to sit there in the audience together, and we'd laugh and we'd learn a lot and we'd get excited. She used to do all the fun stuff. Like they used to do this thing like Bruce Lee, and everyone go, "Hey!" It's like it's a joke that they used to do in their I think it was a productivity school. Good stuff.
What advice would you have for a young couple listening to this now that's starting
Young couple
business together? Yeah, you were in your late 20s,
stay in your lane.
stuffing envelopes.
stay in your own lane. Because that was the problem, right? Like, and you know, we we actually had a coach that was a husband and wife coach, and they helped us kind of like, hey, you let her do your thing, let him do his thing, and just support each other, right? But I wasn't easy in the beginning for sure. Like I was like I had all this stuff in my brain and I just couldn't figure out how to get it out there and share it with others, right? So that was a problem, right? And they used to call me like the tornado. I'd come in and I'd leave, right?
Yeah.
Because it was just like I just was driven and focused, and hey, I got to win at all costs. Not at all costs, but I had to win, and I was like not going to quit no matter what. So that was probably and it's funny because I've asked my wife to come back into the business several times. And, I think she's got, let's call it PTSD maybe from being with me before and like, causing stress in our relationship, causing stress at home because here I am, working. Then it's like almost like because you're in that, as a leader and an individual who's the rainmaker and everything else, like you're the idea man. So you do have to tell people what to do, right? Like you're driving the ship. I mean, you're the captain. You got to say, hey, do this, do that. And our spouses and our children don't like to be told what to do by us. It's just the way it is, like, and vice versa. So that was tough. That caused a lot of conflict with us. Obviously worked through it all and stuff like that. But looking back, that was a big part. Not seeing that. So it's really important for people to, like, if you're going to have somebody working with you, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a team member, an assistant, whatever the case may be, is to have competency in them, right? Let them know that you believe in them and you trust in them that they're going to get the work done, and then you just kind of back off. And if things are and if they're getting it done, it's okay. Like I used to have really specific systems in the way I like to do things, and well, that didn't always work for somebody else, but at the end of the day, they got the job done. But if I found holes in that system, I'd be like, hey, this is why we do it this way. And I always found that the better way to communicate was not, hey, you need to do it this way, but it's here's why I do it this way. And if you see when we don't do it this way, this can what happen, right? You always have to create the why behind it. And then that was a big learning lesson for me that I didn't see in the beginning. Is once people understand the why, just like for ourselves, like why we do what we do, once they understand why we do it this way, and here's the positive, here's the pros of it, and here's the cons of it, when they see it, they're like, oh, now I get it. We'll do it your way because this is what you're trying to accomplish. Now they could come back and say, hey, well, like we can do it this way, and we're still going to still accomplish that why. Okay, I'm fine with that, right? But it's clearly defining each other's roles. You do this, you do that, and give each other permission for feedback, right? Not telling, not correcting, like, hey, do you mind if I give you some feedback, right? Or hey, can you give me some feedback on this? It's something I'm struggling with.
Silver lining 2024 5 for a real estate professional. Where is it?
Well, I mean, to me, if you spent 2023 owning the mistakes that you've made, owning what you did not do, owning, right? And spend it as a year of learning and growing and fixing and implementing and having an outlook of what the future looks like, 2024 will be better because you own it, right? We can't change what we can't change, and we can't control what happens. We can only control what we do. So I look at 2024 and I'm excited about it because I'm way more prepared for 24 than I was for 2023. I spent this entire year working on systems, fixing things, and I'm not by any means perfect, but I'm way far ahead of the game from where I was a year ago this time, and I'm just continuing to move that shit forward. turning down the noise, right? So, and who knows what this lawsuit's going to bring about? We don't know. I mean, appeals, the scary part is this national lawsuit, which basically means that 25 million people are going to get a letter in the mail, right?
What do
And
you mean?
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, when this national lawsuit goes, any 25 million people that did real estate transactions roughly are going to get a letter in the mail to ask if they want to join in the class action lawsuit.
wow.
And it'll be commercials and all kinds of stuff. So that could get really scary, right? But we can't control that. It's out of our control. We can control the fact that consumers still need us. They always will. That's the thing. If you don't realize that, then you shouldn't be in the business because they will,
Mm.
right? Is there a chance that we're going to get paid less per transaction? Certainly could be. I think certain markets more than others. Um, but if there's less agents in the business, I think we'll do more transactions. So if we get paid less per transactions, but we do more transactions, and technology helps us do them easier, right? So that's the thing, right? People like technology has made our jobs harder. It really has. It's made them easier in many ways, like DocuSign versus faxing agreements of sale, like I used to do, that you couldn't even read by the time you got it back, right? So there's a lot of things that have made our job easier, but there's almost so much technology that sometimes it becomes harder. And there's so much communication. Like back in the day, everything was in a notebook. There wasn't like all this email chains and like emailing everybody about everything of every part of the transaction. Like just wrote it in a notebook and it was on the file. I closed the file and put it away. Right, pulled the file out when I needed it, made some notes, put it away. Right. So, but with things like AI, all these systems that we have, I think that hopefully the workload will become a little easier over time so we can do more transactions. But you also have to leverage yourself more, right? Like I have more and more people than I did back in the day to do a transaction than I did before. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out, but I think you have to have an open mind. I think you have to be receptive to the change and you have to embrace the change, right? Not be a victim of what's happening, be a
Mm.
creator of what's happening. So go out and find a better way to do things. But I was having this conversation with my cousin last week, and he's like, if we take that many agents out, how are we going to handle all the transactions? Like, that's what he said. Like, think about it. Like, okay, if there's, this year it's less. I heard a number the other day. I think transactions are like under 4 million this year, like maybe 3.7 or 3.8. Where I think, prior to the pandemic, we were probably in the 4.5 to 4.8 range. I'm not exact on these numbers, but I think it was in that range. And then obviously we got much higher than that during the pandemic. So, all right. So if there's 4 million transactions that get done, I don't know how many realtors there are worldwide, but like if it gets cut in half, it's kind of crazy to think about that there might be more business out there than we know what to do with because there's less agents to service it. That could be cool,
Mm.
right? That's a good problem. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
What
But
about the big brokers?
I don't know. It depends how this lawsuit shakes out because this is a lot of money we're talking about here.
Who would have to pay for that?
The brokers would, right? It's NAR and the big brokerages that have been named in the suit. They're on the hook for the money. They're on the hook for the appeal to come up with the money to have the appeal.
Wow.
So it's a lot of money. And it's what's it look like? I don't know. But somebody like Berkshire Hathaway's got really, 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 really deep pockets. Probably not going to hurt them as much as it's going to hurt like a Compass or an EXP or a KW or something like that, right? It's going to hurt, but we can think what we want to think. I mean, to me, this class action lawsuits, I don't even know why they exist. They're crazy. It's
What percentage of the top producers in the country that became top recruiters do you think are going to want to be top producers again?
I don't know. Good question. I think a lot of people like look. It's. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I've known for a long time, and he said to me like, I said, how business 22. He's like, it was terrible. It was the worst year I've had in 20 some years. As long as I've been in business. And he's been in business longer than that, right? 30 some years probably. And I feel like I'm very prepared for 24. It's like, I'm not prepared financially. And I said, well, just go do some more sales. It's like, I don't want to do sales. I want to run a company. Right. And I think you got to do both. You got to do some sales. You got, unless you really got your company dialed in and you're set up and you got enough agents and your systems are solid and you're coaching and you're training and you're not checked out. Let me tell you, you're not living the dream of, like a seventh level business as the millionaire real estate agent teaches us, right? You got to be involved. You got to be present. One of
It's
my friends, he's running a company. He doesn't sell anymore. He hasn't sold in 4 years, and he doesn't need to because he's there every day. He's present. He's teaching. He's training. He's coaching. He's developing. He's working on systems. He's not selling homes, but he goes to work every day. He ain't sitting on the beach in Mexico or somewhere like that and collecting cash. He ain't doing that. You know, and I know that there's a lot of agents that went down that road that are doing that are just sitting back collecting cash, and eventually that's going to catch up with them.
Yeah, I'd like to just put this out there for some thought though. The seventh level that you talk about, you mentioned, I'd be curious to see how that works in an age of not easy money. When we look at science, a theory is right tested against to be falsified, right? That's how we know if a theory is accurate or not. So
Right.
I'd be curious to see how well that theory plays out in an age where the cost of money is higher, outside of a very strong marketing message that can be. I'm just something to think about, right? I wonder how well that how those propositions stack up in a time of where money is more expensive, rates are higher, there's less margin in the to go around. I don't have an answer. I wonder.
I mean, look, it's a great question, and
Like it could have been created as a right, like a what do you call it? Like a framework based on
right,
a market that was then, and
right,
it could have been right and accurate.
right. Well, the folks
Now,
that are doing it,
I don't know.
there's a couple people out there doing it at an extremely high level, right? They're not selling anymore. I mean, they're running like legit real estate businesses. They're running their teams like a brokerage, right? But they're offering more value. They're doing a lot, like, and they're constantly recruiting. They're bringing new people into their system. They're interviewing 5, 6, 7, 10 agents every week after week after week. Those people will be fine because they've got it dialed in. I'm not one of those people. I'm not recruiting all the time. I don't have all these agents, right? I got to get to that point, but I ain't there yet. And most people are not. It's very small the amount of people that are
Yeah,
actually
I'd love to study that. I'm sure they're working just as much, but what they're doing is different type of work.
right. Correct. That's the thing. I think that people, I
Different
think
type.
the misconception was that, when you take your business to a level where you can step out of sales and run a business, that means that, like, I think the conception with a lot of folks was like, oh, well, then you're just kind of sitting back and overseeing thing, and you're just kind of like, sipping pina coladas and living a good life. That does not work,
Yeah, I mean that's why we left the British.
right? I mean, look,
The
I
tax.
was, me, I've been honest. I was not present in my business for about 8 years, right? And if I was right now, I wouldn't be feeling it. I wouldn't be feeling what most of us are feeling. I would be much. I mean, look, we're not bad, but we're not great, and I wouldn't be in this position if I had not done that, right? That's the thing. It will catch up with you at some point. There is no doubt in my mind for any person. Like, you're in this business until you like are ready to retire and you don't have to worry about that income coming in anymore. Because even if you retired and you're completely left within, unless you have somebody that can replace you and really is running it and like killing it at the level you are, and has seen probably better than you are to those individuals, at some point it'll just die. It'll just die off. It's just the way it works. Like, people buy us.
Mm.
Right? They're not buying the product, they're buying us. It's the people that you attract to your organization, they're attracted, but because of you, right? For us, right? The system, the tools, all that stuff is great, but at the end of the day, it's they look at you as
Yep.
the guy or girl driving that ship, right? And when that guy or girl stops driving that ship, unless there's somebody better than that person or equal to that's replaced them, it's just not going to work. Because I was just like, oh, I'll just go do it myself.
Are you going to be doing more content with your team and you?
Definitely, 100%. I'm going to be doing as much as I possibly get my head around, and I'm encouraging my agents to do the same, right? But what we've been recognized with content, like it's whatever I'm doing now, it ain't even close to being enough. I mean, how many podcasts is this for you for the year?
This is the 206th recording.
Right. I mean, that's amazing.
Thanks.
That's like a podcast a day.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but
it's so worth it.
It takes.
Also fun.
You have to you have great conversations to get the brain going, right? I mean, I like doing these things because it just gets my mind turned on.
Yeah, and like, what the hell else am I going to do? Watch Jeopardy and eat bonbons?
Right. And we got to do something, right?
In closing, I'd like to know if, well, selfishly, I'd like to know if you had a podcast show, what would you call it?
Well, I do have one. I just don't have it. I'm just not doing it consistently. So right now it's called Real Talks.
So it exists. People can listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, by the time people listen to this episode, you'll have like 100 more,
Yeah,
100 more episodes in the queue.
Yeah, I have probably
Let's shout it out.
20 of them on my YouTube channel.
And I've seen clips. They're great episodes. Clips, you're a good interviewer.
Shorts and stuff like that.
Real Talks.
Real Talks. I don't even know what my YouTube channel is. That's like I'm saying.
Jeff Silva.
Yeah,
Jeff on Silva. Instagram. You're on Instagram, yeah?
It's on. Yeah, the full episodes are on YouTube, and they're just I kind of just talk about whatever I feel like talking about.
I've seen some of the interviews. I saw Emily Marquez on there. I saw Jackie Silva, your sister.
Right. Yeah, there's some I mean, I love doing them. They're fun. But yeah, they're great. But I'm gonna turn that up. I came over the other day. I came across something. I was like, oh, that's a maybe I'll change it to that. And I can't remember what it is now. Maybe it was this morning. I was listening to 100 Million Offers. It's a good book.
Oh, Alex, yeah, Alex Hormozy.
Yeah, I jumped on his podcast today. It's good stuff.
Very smart guy. In closing, what's one thing that you'd say that the audience needs to take away, actionable, immediately? Like they're not where they want to be in business. They're listening to this for inspiration and education. What's something?
Align themselves with the right people. That's it. Whether it's if you're a solo agent, you might need to be with a team. And whatever it is, it could be team, it could be brokerage, it could be mastermind group, it could be your friends that you're hanging around with. But to me, it was like when I thought about this year, I said I need to be in business with the right people, right? And I've made moves this year, so I know I was in the business with the right people that have the Sarah similar mindsets. I want to be in alignment, right, with where I want to go. And you could be with one brokerage, it's a great brokerage, and there's another brokerage, a great brokerage, and it just might be that you're better in alignment with the people in the vision. It doesn't make the one you're with wrong or this one right, and vice versa. It's just like, what do you want, right? Like that's probably the key, right? Like, I love it. For years, Gary talks about, like, Gary Keller talks about, like, your why, and Keller Williams teaches classes on why, right? And I had a hard time figuring out why. It was driven by money and success and toys in the beginning, for sure. But then you get to a certain point where, like, that's not fulfillment, right? So as Tony Robbins says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So I felt like a failure even though I had everything, right? So it's like, listen to Simon Sinek, wrote the book Start With Why. Great freaking book, right? Like, what drives you? You hear it, like, people say, oh, what gets you out of bed in the morning? I don't know, right? And like, it's hard. It's a hard question. It's like so simple, but it's so hard. If you ask most people on the street, what do you want? They don't freaking know. They just don't. People would ask me, like, my birthday's coming. What do you want for your birthday? I'm like, world peace. I don't need anything, right? Like, I'm not worried about like what I'll get for my birthday. I'm worried about like what I want to do to continue to grow and like and move my ship forward, right? So like really like as you come to a year's end, ask yourself the question, what do I want? And if you don't know, like dig deep and do some soul searching, read some books, talk to people, get on podcasts, do whatever. But that process can take a long time for a lot of people. But it did for me, right? And to answer your question earlier, a lot of these folks that have kind of gotten away from the business and they're maybe just recruiting or doing whatever, like they might find out that that's the right path for them, or they might find out that's the wrong path for them, right? But you have to really know, you have to be crystal clear on what it is that you want. And that is very hard to figure out. And it's very hard to figure out if you're not clear and clean in the head, right? Like if you're not connected to something greater than yourself, right? If you're not in alignment with your true purpose of what that is, if if you're sedating, through drugs, alcohol, work, sex, whatever, right? Like you're not truly tapped into your inner self and your internal guidance system, then you're not going to be able to figure those things out. And I think that in our industry is probably more important than ever because the industry is changing, as we all can see and know and feel. The world is changing, right? I think that people feel like connection and relationships, not that they've never not been important, but I feel like they're moving to be even more important than they ever were before. And if you're not good with you and your own self, in your own relationship with your own self, you're not going to be able to be good with relationships with others. And you're not going to be able to really have that clarity on the impact that you can make in this world, if that's what you want to do, right? Because I believe that most of the people that are in our industry are here to make an impact, right? This was the vehicle that we chose to do it, right? I see that more and more and more. That in other industries too, but in our industry, if you think about, this is where I think this lawsuit's kind of funny, right? Like they're attacking an industry that represents 20% of GDP, right? But think about how many people are affected by the work that we do. Home inspectors, title companies, mortgage companies, contractors, whether it be flooring, carpet, kitchens, right? Tile, right? Roofers, HVAC contractors, like the list goes on, all affected by a real estate transaction. So even though a real estate transaction represents 20% of GDP, think about all the ancillaries that go along with that. What's that real number? So whether you realize it or not, the work that we do, it impacts millions and millions and millions of people. And I think when you can grasp that and you can see that how important it is what we do, right? And what the benefit that we bring to life, society, the world is, then it's going to maybe help you see things a little bit better. Make sense?
Absolutely.